We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. A few minutes late there, I broke something, but we're here. So we're going to keep it relatively poignant today. The mid-market cycle. We have a pretty much equal risk to reward relationship with where we are in Bitcoin and a lot of the bigger assets. One of the reasons why we love venture capital is pretty much only room for upside if you're so early. But what I want to do is start with the technical long-term chart. Now, we've been watching Bitcoin here on this longer time frame. This brings us back all the way to the beginning of 2017 here, when the first bull market of, or sorry, not the first, sorry, the first arcane bear bull market where I was on YouTube. Started back here. This is where we started the YouTube channel. We had this beautiful nice run up, and then we had around 2 years of accumulation. Now, over the last year and a half, going into 2 years now, from 2019 to 2020 to 2022, congratulations, it's 2022, ladies and gentlemen. Whew. Update your calendars. We had a very beautiful bull market, and we're basically, I think, either right in the middle, and a lot of people are wondering, is the bull market over? So my argument for this being the bull market middle comes from a few places, yet there is obviously always good conjecture to make that right where we're sitting, there's pretty much equal risk to reward. I really give a round of applause to people like Michael Saylor, who show that just accumulating and ignoring a lot of the noise is such an important way to go. Some of the biggest mistakes you can make is by becoming too emotional with the markets, and the price does that with people. So this is one of the easiest ways to do it, is have a macro perspective. So this macro perspective of from 2017 to where we are today shows that we've been going up, even though we've had dramatic decreases in that price. So first, let's make the assumption then we're going to go to the downside. Let's say we go down, we come all the way down to $18,000, and we build another reaccumulation channel here. Boom, make a head and shoulders before going much higher. That's awesome. See, what I always try to do is share with everyone the fundamental reason why we are long-term bullish on assets like Bitcoin and largely the tech sector. The underlying story right now has a lot more to do with what's going on in the macro market, right? Things that are happening with the dollar, the S&P 500, and how much of the market supply is being created in any particular period of time. So we actually had been going through a fairly strong dollar recovery. So this is the DXY. This is that was the last 50 years of it. We started off at. So here as we get closer into 2020 and 2021. So here's the start of 2020. It's not inverse, but a lot of Bitcoin's upcycle had to do with downwards momentum in the dollar. And in the last little while, the Bitcoin's been strong and the dollar has been strong, right? So even though Bitcoin did not rally completely inverse to the dollar, what we're witnessing is largely a conversation of monetary inflation and other epic forces like deflation coming from the nature of the technology that we use, things like Bitcoin. Well, technology, I think in general is deflationary, but Bitcoin is a very useful portion of that digital asset ownership that we never ever really rewarded for any of the growth of the original web model unless you invested. So what I believe we're witnessing here, first off, is two things. Number one, there's a much, much longer multi-century story taking place here. It's outlived human nature, human nature has outlived us as individuals. So speculation has a lot of key signatures. So the dollar is actually likely going to continue strong. In Costa Rica right now, if we look at the colone, it's like 40, we're at 40% inflation in the last 10 years since I first moved here. So it's a dramatic decrease in the purchasing power of the local currency supply. So when we look at this macro story, one of the things we're trying to understand is where do we go in the next 10 years, right? So let's look at possibility two. Possibility two is that we basically hit a little floor here and then go up to around $120,000. Either way, we're going to come back down eventually. This is why a consistent accumulation strategy is so powerful, and learning how to not take profits, but I think live your life is probably the best way to put it. Although largely profits, when you're first acquiring wealth and capital, that's what it looks like. It looks like, oh, here's my profits to manage. But you want to think of your assets more as a productive, not non-productive assets like a car. Well, anyways, so the portion of this story I think that's most important, because we're halfway through this market cycle, we've already had such a beautiful accumulation and move into this range. The only advice that I think is poignant is basically just accumulate whatever fits in a monthly budget. The up and downside, at least in things like Bitcoin and Ethereum right now, is pretty much equal. We have an equal amount of room for up as we do down effectively. We're going to see large 80% corrections in all these assets. Now, there might come a time when, if the dollar becomes totally destroyed through printing, that we see massive runs on the price as people are no longer willing to sell assets for dollars. And we've seen things like this happen in the past. And largely what happens is everyone gets caught in the day-to-day. So here's Bitcoin on the daily, right? This is mostly where a lot of people's conversation goes into, well, the price is going to go here if it does this, and right now it still looks to me like we are in our LPS. I want to see nice clear closes above 58,000. If we don't get that, we're going to come back down, and we could come back down as low as 17 grand. And again, this is only a short-term portion of the story. That's why ultimately, if you're new, just invest at a frequency like going to the gym. And if you want to continue to study, use each moment not to find out if you're right, but to try to understand what the market is saying. I think the market is still largely bullish. So the dollar has been strong, showing weakness, but let's go over the rest of the markets before, right? So here's the total asset valuation. This is all of the cryptos that are out there combined. For those of you that have been following along for some time, you'll recognize this beautiful widening megaphone pattern. We're pretty much near the end of the market. Again, I still wager about halfway. We get one more crazy push, like little push up. Maybe we go to 3.16 trillion, which could drive Bitcoin upwards of $90,000. And then we come back down and we reaccumulate between 30 to 60 before we go much higher into 200,000. And everybody gets caught in the day to day. We get caught on this kind of, oh my God, is it going to make or break Bitcoin? It's like, how much is it going to go up? Can I make 100x today? And those are all ultimately signs, I think, of an immature investor. Now, the reason I think that is because there are a few people that I really look up to in the investment space. For instance, the Monish Prabhai, the gentleman who wrote Dandao, I really like his philosophy. Naval Ravikant, huge fan of his investment philosophy. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the day-to-day technical structure, just like in music, say I want to learn how to play a rudimentary notation like a paradiddle on the drum kit. This is how we adapt the day-to-day. Like, okay, what's market and supply? What are the price and how do the market cap and how does this buying and selling affect that total market cap based off the liquid amount of asset within the market space effectively, right? So these are all the technical points, but what's interesting is you come down to a philosophy when you've done it, I think, long enough, because this is about human nature less than it is about the day-to-day charts. And so we like to use this, for a study guide, because I'm young, I've got a bunch of years ahead of me and I love studying. So two, it gives us a really unique insight to the pulse of the market sentiment. So one of the things we also like to do is take a look at the volatility index. And the volatility index today has actually been pushing into a low. Let's go back for the day here. There we go. We've actually been pushing into a low. So there's a lot of fear around the Omicron, which started here in around November to December, and largely people have lost that fear, or the markets have, at least the markets have lost that. We've been in this really weird, anxious, and contentious place in terms of human volatility. If we look back in the past, we're consistently in a state of anxiety and fear here. We're riding a few points above what the average was for quite a long time. Now this is back in 2008 during the financial crisis, so we're still riding well above that. Probably the media, I would put some things to, but when we're measuring market sentiment on a short term, like what's going to happen? Is it going to make or break Bitcoin? Are we going to go down or are we going to go up? It's a great theoretical question that we want to know the answer to. And we want to know it with some level of certainty. So I feel very confident still. Now, why is it? Okay, well, these technical aspects of what we're seeing in the market make me feel confident. We're actually at a fairly low area of anxiety in terms of volatility index, and we are also at a pretty low area of fear. So, or sorry, a rather high area of fear in comparison with a high area of greed, right? So we're in actually a pretty fearful place, considering the volatility index is basically at its low. So these two factors, along with the consistent depression in the market supply here still, everything that's been put onto the market has been accumulated, even though it hasn't been pushed back down to its lows. I think that they're finding a nice, I guess, they're still accumulating, right? So even though we're not seeing new lows put on the exchanges right now, the big players are going in and they're buying up their consistent amount. So we can see bang, 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 bang. Michael Saylor coming out. We're buying another $200 million in Bitcoin. This consistency in asset acquisition, I think, is becoming more and more stable. So these really big, massive blow-off tops are unlikely. I still think we get somewhat of a blow-off top for this market. Again, I've stood by this assertion since we started the bull market. Even though the timing was off, I still think we're going to go to around $90,000 to $120,000. Anything over that is like we're too high for whatever. And we're actually in a very interesting aspect in terms of the potential of this growth, like the metaverse, the gaming sector. So there's a lot of bullish remarks right now within this whole sector. The venture capital sector has found all new areas of value for this as well. And the everyday person, I think, is getting more and more accustomed to the digital identity or digital assets, digital identity. Not that these are good things. I live in the middle of the jungle for a reason, but just as an example. So because we see such a large adoption of this new digital identity, digital asset world that people are walking into, I suspect that we're going to get a pretty consistent bull market for probably about the next 10 years. So Bitcoin is going to go up and it's going to go down. But what I'm actually more interested in is the general sentiment of the markets as a whole. And this has to do with a bigger conversation around governments and money. One I don't want to get into because it probably sounds political, and I don't like those things. So let's stay focused on the asset aspect. So let's take a look at the S&P 500. One of the reasons why this is so important to understand, and we constantly revert back to this, it's because keeping the calm and confidence necessary to stay up this high in the market. And we are very high in the markets, ladies and gentlemen. We are at an insane level of high in the markets. These markets are basically smoking glue. Why? Why are the markets so high? Why is there such an irrationality in the market? You know, if you do your homework, you start to realize that there's actually a lot of problems here. So one of the things we like to do to kind of check in on that problem is the monetary supply. So I think the reason why this is such an important kind of repetition of the conversation is because ultimately this is our fundamental. This is the fundamental right here. This orange line represents the monetary supply. So the Federal Reserve creating debt loans effectively and injecting those debt loans into the ecosystem. We probably get around 50 cents of productive value return for every dollar of debt created at this moment. We're not doing great. Not a super productive society. And what you end up seeing is that this creates a bunch of zombie companies, it creates a bunch of overnight millionaires, and it can go a lot further than you think. So again, if you have not, and you want to understand stories of inflation, the book, The Dying of Money, not the dying of money, but dying of money, is a great kind of recollection of stories from around the world of what hyperinflation looks like in a country by country basis. But right now, we're witnessing hyperinflation basically as a global standard. So you're seeing, people, I used to live in the middle of nowhere, and there's been 11 properties that got bought up here in the last year. When inflation or the dollar can run and move to so many new areas, unlike it couldn't do in the early 1930s as easily during the Depression, you couldn't have the flight of capital as easy. What we're witnessing, and we're going to witness, in my opinion, this is the long-standing reason for why you just want to be investing in Bitcoin in general, and why I think so many people grasp the importance of this technological story too. Sovereign free choice money of any kind is a very valuable technology sentiment to keep close in your portfolio. for philosophical and for fundamental reasons. And this is the fundamental reason. We ignore all the fun philosophical ones. They're going to print an enormous amount of capital to continue to keep this game going to save face. The length for which that they can print that capital is probably another 5 to 10 years. Again, the reason being is because hyperinflation is not showing its face in average day-to-day goods. It's only really showing its face in the markets. So you best be in the market to because it's look at the correlation. This is a direct correlation of price. There's no price discovery here. No, we're not like, oh my God, this new company has created value. There's no wealth generation taking place anymore. This is a zombie ecosystem. And one of the few unique kind of sovereign lights that's out there is some things like Bitcoin. Now, again, I'm an old school fanboy of Bitcoin. The first time I found it, it sold me as digital peer-to-peer sovereign choice money. I didn't care how the technology worked. That concept to me is worth so much. We've been looking at getting secondary passports and what it's like, just operating in multiple jurisdictions effectively. And you realize that sovereignty is something that you have to often buy in this world. And it's a little bit at odds with a few deep tenets of, let's say, a more stoic way of life. But what's fun is that human nature is really guiding all of this. So you can enjoy the ride. Investing is really simple. When we look at the S&P 500 and we see a direct correlation between the monetary supply and assets, and then we look back, and we look back in history, we're like, hey, history, what's happened? And then history's like, well, this has actually happened time and time again. Humans just keep printing fake fiat currency. They obliterate that currency supply. All prices, asset valuations explode, and they come to a revaluation of all those assets. And then they start over again, trying to figure out that money and currency are different things. And this is one of the dilemmas, is that as the human ecosystem and society grows, how do you deal with the inflation of new people and the generation of new wealth? But the problem is, when it's like this on this little orange bar here, it's controlled by the hands of a very few people who can give money to their bailout buddies. It's not working in anyone's favor. This is an economic system that is not in the favor of the interest of the people. Again, free choice sovereign money like Bitcoin and the ability to create those things. The fact that, I think that we have a bear token. We give it out in our private community as rewards for helping us do certain tasks. Like, if you retweet it today, we'll give you X amount of bear tokens for fun. And what's unique is they can take the bear token, you go trade it for Bitcoin, you could trade it for Ethereum, you could trade it for Avocado Guild, or you could trade it for anything, because that's the fun of a decentralized market. And what's unique here is that these are free choice peer-to-peer markets, not just free choice peer-to-peer money. They are very synergistic and extremely important. So we do keep our eyes on Ethereum and Avalanche and Solana and the rest of the developing. I'm just using Bitcoin as the example for our fundamental case of make or break. Ladies and gentlemen, there are no make or break moments here right now in Bitcoin. What is breaking is the dollar, and we are witnessing it in the asset inflation. Anyways, that's my thought for today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It basically means just keep investing at a rate that you can choose to do so based off the revenue you generate through the businesses that you hopefully are providing value to your community with. or not, whatever. Okay, we'll take a few questions though, because I'm sure you guys have a few thoughts to share with me. I'm going to do another video. We'll go live later tonight. There are a few market sentiments that are deeper here. Again, we are at basically the mid ground. We're equally as likely to go to 19 grand as we are to 90,000. But the best way to look at it is to, again, go back to where we were when the bull market started on March 11th. When the day the WHO declared the pandemic, that was the start of the bull market. That was the start of buy when there is blood in the streets. I will forever hold that moment in time as a flagpole for all future moments when people become irrationally fucking scared of invisible, non-scary things. Anyways, here's the question time. So if you are watching the video up to this point, I'm just going to be chatting with the live stream. So if you want to stick around, thank you. Give you a thumbs up for all of this time you have spent with us already. I appreciate that. And then we're going to do a question. We're going to look at the screen. We're going to look at the screen over here. I'm going to see what you guys have to say. Okay, let's see. Go back to the top. S&P 500 to 0. Yeah, no, it's going to continue to go up. But that's a function of the degradation of the dollar, not really the market going up. Assets are always worth more than paper nonsense. Let's be real now. Come on. Especially when we've seen them. Okay, I'll give you insight to another moment. One of the other moments where before I started the Arcane Bear channel, when I first figured out Bitcoin, like it hit me in a few places. It was the Sapritic financial collapse when they basically just took money out of people's bank accounts and said you can't have it anymore. That was a big light switch for me. Anyways, so what you need to be more worried about is the totalitarian dollars. That's a much larger problem. Assets are going to continue to go up. Assets have only pretty much ever gone up. Buy a piece of property, although productive assets. This is, I think, one of the important part. Just raw property, unless it's productive, is not a good investment. So assets to the moon, death to the dollar, I think is what it looks like. Or not death, just like a slow kind of whimper, pop, bang into something new. Duncan Voss says, brilliant TO zombie ecosystem can go any direction short term, but it has to go up long term. This is essentially, I think, the easiest flag to fly and bang the drum in support of, because it's what will bring success to the most people the easiest. Jumping in, leverage trading, all this hype and emotion that takes place within a market cycle, it often ends up hurting more people than it helps. And you can make so much money in these markets just by being consistent and adventurous and kind of weighting the balance of those two. Okay, let's see. Take a look. A few more. I'm balls deep in crypto. It's too late to turn back. Pass the glue. Yes. Well, not the crypto markets, but all of the markets are extraordinarily high, and it's due to inflation of the monetary ecosystem. It's been going on for quite some time, and we're the lucky beneficiaries of that wave right now. Web3 is the future. It is imminent. Yeah, we're going through a lot of it. Let's see, Duncan Voss. We all know you're gonna grow your hair out. Oh yes, I'll grow my hair out when I have my first kid. After that, I'll just let it grow. But for now, we'll keep it short. Took a vote. All the women said keep it short. I'm like, okay. Let's see here. Thoughts about XRP? I'm not a fan of the banks. So anything that wants to support their chicanery, yeah, this is a great idea because the banks, we love them. No, I got this is because the banks, fucking criminals. Maybe, right? Anyways, that's what I think. Thoughts on time in Wonderland? Yes, in the private community, many fans. Pretty much everything Avalanche DeFi we're fans of right now. Broad spectrum. Nice. Well, awesome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for all the positive support and feedback. I didn't want to read all you guys say, read all the questions, unless they were somewhat poignant to today's chat. So we'll leave it at that. I appreciate your guys' support. Hope you're enjoying the new year. It's 2022. We need a guitar outro. Oh, that I can do. I can do the guitar outro. I think I can do. I'll do the guitar outro. So here we go. Guitar outro. Okay. So, because y'all are freaking awesome. And let's see. Oh, how do I have to stand to get up this high? It's not still in tune. Thank you for joining us on today's show. It's Tio and the Arcane Bear. Anyways, we'll have some more fun here. We'll do some more live streams again soon. Thank you all for joining us today. It's Tio and the Arcane Bear, and bam.